So I want you to imagine a scenario for a second. Just picture yourself going about, a completely normal Tuesday.
Right, just your average day.
Yeah. You wrap up a meeting, you pack your bag, you walk down the hall, and you reach the door. But right as your hand touches the handle, you realize you forgot your keys.
Ugh. The absolute worst feeling.
It is. It's this tiny, annoying split-second realization. So you turn back, you walk back into the office.
Right.
And in that exact fraction of a second, because you were inside instead of outside, a car bomb detonates
Yep.
right where you would have been standing on the sidewalk.
Wow.
Yeah. Your life is saved, but simultaneously, your entire existence is plunged into this wild world of espionage, faith, political terror, and just absolute chaos.
All because of some keys.
Exactly, just because you forgot a piece of jagged metal on a desk.
I mean, that exact moment of suspended physics, where a mundane lapse in memory becomes the literal barrier between life and death,
Yeah.
is exactly where Zayvon Vardanyan starts his novel, The Brazilian Pear.
It's such a crazy hook.
It really is.
Yeah.
And, while there are plenty of explosions and physical chases in this book, what we're really unpacking today are the explosive ideas underneath all that action.
Right, the philosophy of it all. And we have a pretty unique stack of sources for this deep dive today. We're looking at the novel's text, obviously, but also the author's incredibly intense YouTube interview and this very stark author's note at the end of the book.
Which is packed with some heavy real-world claims.
Very heavy. And I should set some ground rules before we get into it, because the ideas we're exploring deal heavily with the Iranian government, religious persecution, human rights abuses, and some, frankly, very sharp critiques of Western feminism. We are operating strictly as neutral observers today.
Right, that's a crucial point to make for everyone listening.
Yeah, our job isn't to take a political stance or endorse a specific worldview. Our job is just to dissect the psychological and philosophical architecture that Vardanyan has built and let you weigh the merits of those ideas yourself.
Exactly, we're just the guides here. And I think the architecture of this universe really begins with how it treats the whole concept of coincidence.
Oh, absolutely. The whole keys thing.
Right. You just laid out that inciting incident. We have Peter Rue, who is this cynical, kind of burned-out investigator who runs a YouTube channel.
A very relatable character for the internet age.
Oh, totally. And he reaches out to a Persian-American activist named Temia Gorani. Now, the context is wild. He's out of coffee beans, he's pacing his apartment, and on a total whim, he sends her an email.
Like a cold pitch.
Yeah, basically. And she miraculously agrees to an interview. So he goes to her unassuming office in Dallas. They talk. She gets her keys, turns back, and the window explodes in this massive shower of glass.
It's just so cinematic.
It is. But the text meticulously notes something very strange here. Peter's body moves almost unnaturally fast to pin her to the sofa, shielding her from the shrapnel with his own back.
Okay, I want to stop right there and play devil's advocate for a second.
Go for it.
Because later in the text, Peter and Tamina are hiding out, right? And they're trying to process the sheer statistical improbability of this whole sequence of events.
The math of it all.
Exactly. And Peter says, there are no coincidences, only the illusion of coincidence. He starts talking about how random doesn't feel random when you look close enough.
Which is a heavy philosophical claim.
But wait, isn't Peter just experiencing massive survivor's guilt mixed with adrenaline? I mean, the guy was just in a bomb blast. His nervous system is on fire.
That's a very fair point.
Isn't he just desperately trying to rationalize a completely random, chaotic tragedy so he doesn't, lose his mind? Why jump straight to the conclusion that this is some sort of cosmic destiny?
I mean, it is a completely valid question.
Yeah.
And Vardanyan actually anticipates that exact skepticism. Because Peter is, by his very nature, a skeptic.
Right, he's a journalist or an investigator.
Exactly. He's a guy who hunts for empirical truth. But the text forces Peter, and by extension the reader, to confront the physical reality of what happened in that room.
What do you mean by the physical reality?
Well, Peter reflects on the exact timeline of the blast. He says, something made my back move unnaturally fast, maybe even before the blast, not after.
Wait, before?
Yes. He realizes that human conscious reaction time is simply too slow to register an explosion, process the threat, locate Temine, and physically throw his body over hers before the glass hits.
Oh, I see. The physics just don't align with conscious heroism.
Precisely. His brain couldn't have mathematically commanded his body to move fast enough.
Wow, that's a wild realization to have about your own body.
It really is. And it leads him to a staggering philosophical conclusion. He tells Temine, my back was just the tool. The miracle came from somewhere else entirely.
So he's completely stripping away his own ego there.
Exactly. He stripped the ego of being the hero who made this brave, conscious choice. Instead, he views himself as an instrument.
Like the universe just picked him up and moved him.
Yeah. The universe, or destiny, or whatever mechanism governs reality in this novel, needed her to survive.
Hell.
And it used his physical mass to ensure that survival. Peter literally says, destiny's a big word for a guy like me. But yeah, I think something lined up.
I mean, think about your life like an incredibly complex digital algorithm for a second.
Okay, I'm with you.
You know when you check your spam folder on a complete whim? You never do it, but today you do. And you find a life-changing email, maybe a crucial job offer, or a message from an estranged relative.
Right, totally random.
If it happens once, you call it a glitch in your routine. You call it luck.
Sure.
But what if you check the spam folder, find the email which leads to a meeting where you forget your keys, which keeps you inside a building right as a meteor hits the sidewalk outside?
That's a lot of dominoes.
Exactly. At what point does a string of logical coincidences statistically demand to be viewed as the algorithm working exactly as intended?
Well, the novel provides the specific data points of that algorithm. Peter notes that his coffee was gone. He says, damn, no more beans, which left him restless and agitated.
So he's pacing his apartment instead of working.
Right, waiting for her email. He hyper-focuses on her Instagram and her LinkedIn out of pure distraction. Every tiny mundane inconvenience, the lack of coffee, the dropped keys, it was all a necessary interlocking gear.
Just turning to place his physical body exactly between Tamina and a lethal shard of glass.
Exactly.
Okay, but if we accept that Peter is right, if we accept that the universe essentially bent the laws of physics and probability to save this woman,
Yeah.
the immediate question Peter has to ask is, what makes her so dangerous? What is the threat she poses that someone tried to literally erase her from existence in the first place?
And that takes us directly into the interview they were conducting right before the bomb went off.
Yeah.
Which serves as this profound educational moment in the book regarding the theology and the danger of her specific faith.
Right. Because Peter admits during the interview that he made an assumption about her.
He did. Because she is a highly visible Iranian-American advocate, he just assumed she was Muslim.
Which is, I mean, a common assumption for people to make, statistically.
Sure, but Timina corrects him. She explains that she is a first-generation American, and she is a Baha'i.
I have to admit, my knowledge of the Baha'i faith was pretty limited before diving into the source material.
A lot of people says.
She explains that it is an independent religion born in 19th century Persia, which is modern-day Iran.
Right, and Peter brings up this staggering fact he found in his own preliminary research. He points out that in a tyrannical state like Iran, where, many minority groups face immense hardship, the Baha'is are targeted with a uniquely severe systematic persecution.
We're talking about arbitrary arrests, imprisonment, executions.
Yes, and the methodical denial of basic human rights, like being legally barred from higher education.
Naturally, Peter asks the question anyone would ask in that situation. Why?
Right, why them specifically?
Because Iran has populations of Christians, Jews, and Zoroastrians, and those groups face systemic discrimination, absolutely, but the Baha'is get the absolute worst of the state's wrath. Why is the hatred directed at them so disproportionately fierce?
Well, Temina provides a vital philosophical and historical distinction here, and it really explains the psychology of a theocratic state.
Oh, so?
She explains that the regime's terror is rooted in the very nature of what the Baha'i faith claims to be. It is not a branch of something else.
Right, because Peter uses the word reform, trying to understand if it's like a sect of Islam.
Exactly. And she gently but very firmly corrects him. She says it is a new, independent revelation.
I mean, that distinction between a reform and a new revelation is massive.
It changes everything.
It's the difference between writing a critical review of a software program and writing a completely new operating system that makes the old one obsolete.
That is a brilliant way to put it. And that is exactly how the ruling power structure views it.
They view it as an existential threat.
Completely. To understand why this is so terrifying to the state, we have to look at the historical context Temina provides. The faith was founded by the Bab, a merchant from Shiraz, in 1844.
Okay, 1844.
Now imagine the sociological landscape of 1844 Persia. It is a deeply patriarchal, agrarian, theocratic society.
Very traditional, very rigid.
Extremely. And suddenly, a new revelation emerges that promotes religious pluralism. The idea that all major world religions are valid chapters in one continuous divine curriculum.
Which is already radical for the time.
But it goes further. It explicitly teaches gender equality, asserting that men and women are equal wings of a bird, and society cannot fly if one wing is broken.
In 1844, that's
It
incredible.
pushes for universal education, specifically emphasizing literacy for girls, and it advocates for economic restructuring to narrow the extreme gap between the wealthy elite and the impoverished masses.
I mean, Peter actually whistles when he hears this in the text. He says, that sounds so modern. And this was the 1800s.
It's mind-blowing when you really think about the timeline. But it highlights the existential threat of newness to an entrenched institution.
What do you mean by the threat of newness?
Well, if you are a massive theological and political power structure, a group asking for reform within your system is an annoyance. You can manage them.
You can absorb them or negotiate.
Exactly. You can debate them on your own theological terms, or you can suppress them using the existing rules. But a group that stands up and says, we have an entirely new, independent revelation from God that mandates absolute gender equality right here in the heart of your empire, that fundamentally invalidates your monopoly on truth.
They're not playing the same game anymore.
Right. It doesn't ask for permission to change the rules. It operates on a completely different set of rules.
So the institution fears the new paradigm infinitely more than an internal rebellion, because an internal rebellion at least acknowledges the institution's power by fighting it.
That is spot on.
A new paradigm just makes the institution irrelevant.
Precisely. Tammany tells Peter, we're seen as a threat because we don't conform. And unlike other recognized minorities, we're not protected by the Constitution. Not even nominally.
Because the state cannot debate the theology without lending it legitimacy.
Exactly. So they have to completely eradicate the alternative. They resort to spreading these absurd conspiracy theories, claiming Baha'is are spies for Israel or agents of Western imperialism.
Just to manufacture a justification for the cruelty.
Basically, yes.
And what's wild is that Tamina's response to this cruelty isn't just quiet survival. I mean, her LinkedIn reads like a battle plan.
She is relentless.
She organizes petitions, gives speeches, aids dissidents. She acts as a megaphone for people who are being systematically silenced.
Which puts a huge target on her back.
Right. But her fierce defense of a faith born in Persia brings up a deeply fascinating paradox in how she views her own identity.
Oh, this is one of the most psychologically rich elements of the entire novel.
Yeah.
How does she reconcile her ancestral homeland with the people currently ruling it?
Yes. We see this tension snap perfectly in the hospital scene right after the bombing.
Such a tense scene.
It really is. Peter is heavily medicated. He has a back full of stitches, he's groggy, and his filter is just completely gone.
He's running on pure adrenaline and painkillers.
Exactly. And he's trying to protect her, right? He's telling her she can't go back to her home or her office, and he clumsily implies that her loud, outspoken critiques of the Iranian regime make it incredibly obvious who sent the bomber.
Right.
And in doing so, he basically calls her anti-Iranian.
And that phrase just triggers a massive visceral reaction from her.
Oh, she shuts it down immediately.
Despite the chaos and the trauma of the day, she stops him cold. Her words are measured, but the text makes it clear they are absolute steel. She says, I'm not anti-Iranian. I'm against the sadistic government of Iran.
That distinction is everything to her.
It is. She explicitly separates the human rights violations, the chains on women, the executions of Baha'is, the political imprisonment from her roots and her culture. She tells Peter they're two different things. Please don't call me that again.
It's like inheriting a beautiful ancient family heirloom.
Okay, I like where this is going.
Let's say it's a priceless, intricate clock. You love the craftsmanship, you revere the history of it, you cherish what it represents about your ancestors.
Right.
But the person currently guarding that clock in the estate is violently smashing the gears with a hammer. Your fight to stop that person, your loud condemnation of their actions, isn't an attack on the clock.
Wow.
It's a desperate, passionate attempt to save the clock. Tamina does not hate Iran. She hates the people smashing the gears.
That is a highly accurate way to visualize her internal landscape. I mean, the source material emphasizes this concept of loving the poetic, historical soul of Persia.
We see references to figures like the poet Rumi, right?
Constantly. Rumi is often invoked as a symbol of the deep spiritual and artistic heritage of the culture. And you have to remember, Tamini is a first-generation American.
She's never even been there.
Right. She has never actually set foot on Iranian soil. Yet she grew up completely steeped in its language, its poetry, and its values.
So, fighting the regime is basically the ultimate proof that she loves the culture.
Exactly. Her activism is fundamentally an act of devotion to the people, not an act of treason against the geography. She says to Peter earlier in the interview, "My courage comes from believing in the dignity of every human being."
It's such a pure motivation.
It is. Her fight is about preserving human dignity against a bureaucratic machine that seeks to crush it. It requires holding two completely conflicting realities in your mind simultaneously.
Which is incredibly hard to do.
Right. The reality that my ancestral homeland is a place of profound beauty, and the reality that the bureaucracy currently running it is monstrous.
And speaking of bureaucracy, this is a perfect transition. Because while Temine is fighting this massive, ideologically driven bureaucracy abroad, Peter suddenly finds himself slamming headfirst into a different kind of mindless bureaucracy right at home in Texas.
Oh, the FBI.
Yes. Which brings us to the introduction of the FBI agents and this brilliant concept that emerges from their interrogation officer Jerry's razor.
The post-bombing interrogation scene is just a masterclass in contrasting human reality with institutional blindness.
Let's look at the environment Vardanian builds here because the setting does a lot of the heavy lifting.
It really does.
The smoke from the bomb has barely cleared. Peter and Tamina are in this sterile clinic setting. The smell of blood and antiseptic is literally in the air.
It's raw.
Extremely raw. And into this visceral spacewalk, FBI agents Bradley, Simpson, Rice, and Morris. They are in their pristine suits, completely detached from the physical trauma of the room.
And right away, the text makes it clear they are hunting for an easy narrative.
They actually start leaning on Peter, the guy who literally just took shrapnel to the spine to save this woman. They imply he might be the bomber.
I know, it's infuriating to read. But why do they do this? It's not necessarily because they are evil, it's because of profound institutional inertia.
Institutional inertia. Unpack that for us.
Well, in a massive federal agency, an agent's career is often built on closing cases efficiently, mitigating risk, and filing reports that make sense to the people above them.
It's about the paperwork.
Exactly. Simpson says, explosive signatures match devices they've used before. We're not chasing ghosts. They want this tied up in a neat, geopolitically standard bow that fits their existing files.
A complex, philosophical, internationally tangled assassination attempt is messy.
Very messy.
But a local guy with a YouTube channel making a bomb in his garage, that's easy.
Right. They are letting their preconceived protocols completely override the physical evidence right in front of their eyes.
But then standing in the background, we have Officer Jerry.
I love Officer Jerry.
Yes.
He is the perfect foil to these suited agents.
He really is. The text describes his voice as hoarse, worn down by decades of actual, on-the-ground police work. He's just a local cop assigned to guard the door.
He explicitly states he's just there for security.
Yeah. But he listens to these elite federal agents spinning their absurd theories, and he finally just reaches his breaking point.
He acts as a human Occam's razor.
Okay, for anyone who hasn't encountered the term, Occam's razor is this philosophical problem-solving principle. It essentially suggests the simplest explanation is usually the correct one.
If you hear hoofbeats, think horses, not zebras.
Exactly. Don't multiply entities beyond necessity. Keep it simple.
And Jerry applies this principle directly to the messy reality of human behavior. He looks at the agents and says, in 30 years, I've seen enough to call this nonsense.
He just calls it out.
He does. He says,
Yeah.
in the face of danger, a man rushes to protect what matters most to him, his honor, another person, even his own hide. But never, never does he shield someone he's supposedly meant to blow up.
I mean, it is such a pure, undeniable truth. A guy doesn't take a bomb blast to the spine for a woman he is actively trying to assassinate. It violates every fundamental law of human survival.
Right. Jerry's razor cuts right through the FBI's tangled web of explosive signatures and geopolitical theories. He forces them to look at the literal blood soaking through Peter's shirt.
And the agents absolutely hate him for it.
Oh, they despise him in that moment.
Agent Bradley actually hisses at him, "You're right, you're here just for security." Bradley is so threatened because Jerry's grounded common sense exposes the absolute absurdity of the FBI's highly educated ignorance.
It's a brilliant dynamic. And this scene links to a much darker conversation Peter has later with his investigator friend, Bob.
Oh, Bob, yes.
Bob confirms that the FBI is completely hooked on the easy narrative and refuses to look at alternative suspects. Peter angrily calls the whole system a bloody bureaucratic cesspool.
He's not wrong.
He's not. But Bob introduces something even more disturbing during this chat. The Mickey Mouse theory of corruption.
The Mickey Mouse theory. This is a crucial lens for understanding the modern political landscape that Vardanyan is writing about.
It's terrifying, honestly.
So the idea is that historically, corrupt institutions or corrupt individuals within institutions had to at least put up a front, right?
They had to pretend to be the good guys.
Exactly. They had to wear a Mickey Mouse costume, this
Yeah.
presentable, smiling facade of legitimacy to fool the public. They had to hide their crimes behind complex laundering schemes or sophisticated
Oh,
cover-ups.
there was an effort to conceal.
But modern corruption, it has realized that the public is so exhausted, so overloaded with information that it doesn't even need to hide anymore.
Bad guys aren't even trying to look good.
No, they just stare you in the face, commit the crime, and rely on the bureaucracy's weaponized apathy to let them get away with it. Peter realizes this when Bob uncovers a blatant theft by a culprit named Hawkins, and the system just shrugs.
It's the terrifying realization that the system isn't actually broken.
Wait, what?
It's functioning exactly as it was designed to, which is to protect itself from scrutiny. The FBI agents aren't villains in a cartoon sense. They are just catastrophically arrogant and intellectually lazy.
Wow.
And their lazy solution to the problem of Tamina Gorani sparks one of the most profound philosophical meditations in the entire novel.
Because their solution isn't to solve the crime or protect her freedom, their solution is to put her in a box.
Exactly. Let's talk about the Bastrop safe house.
Yes, the Bastrop safe house, the illusion of safety, and the true calculus of bravery. After the interrogation, Agent Rice hands Peter a disposable phone and tells them they are being relocated to Bastrop.
To a secure house hidden in the Lost Pines forest of Texas.
Right, and Rice promises them food, clothes, appliances, everything they could possibly need to live comfortably while they hide.
And when they arrive, the author spends a significant amount of time describing the physical environment of this house.
The descriptions are so incredibly deliberate, it reads like an advertisement for a luxury retreat.
He does.
There are plush beige sofas, a massive stone fireplace, a pristine granite-topped kitchen island. There are new jeans hanging in the closet with the price tags still attached.
The pantry is fully stocked.
Yeah, with boxed almond milk and diapers. Peter notes this bizarre level of domestic detail, observing that someone had prepared this place for more than just raw survival. He says, "This was sanctuary by design."
But it's a gilded cage.
Completely.
Tamina walks into this luxurious space, looks at the beige sofas and the boxed almond milk, and she feels this deep, chilling unease. She says, "It's beautiful, like a painting you don't quite believe."
And Peter agrees, right?
Yes. Filtering the environment through his cynical, tactical lens, he replies, "Paintings hide cracks." He immediately clocks the security flaws. There are no perimeter defenses, no cameras, no actual guards.
So it's not even physically that safe.
Right. But Tamina's realization goes far beyond just physical security.
She realizes the psychological trap, because back in the clinic before they even saw the house, she understood what this indefinite relocation actually meant.
What did it mean to her?
The FBI's plan was to keep her there, completely severed from her network, her advocacy, and her public platform. She tells Peter, "The worst part is the Iranian regime, by and large, will have succeeded in silencing me, what they call safety. It's prison."
And then she delivers that line.
Yeah, she says, maybe safety is prison, isn't it?
Maybe safety is prison. If we truly explore the implications of that statement, it forces us to define the nature of freedom itself.
How so?
What Tamina recognizes is that real freedom is inherently, unavoidably unsafe. Freedom requires exposure.
It requires being seen.
Exactly. It requires standing in the public square and using your voice, which automatically makes you a target to those who want you quiet. By accepting the FBI's version of safety, which is just isolation closed in comfort, she is effectively doing the regime's work for them.
She's silencing herself.
Right. She is removing herself from the geopolitical board. The bomb failed to kill her, but the safe house succeeds in erasing her.
But stepping back out of that safe house, knowing a bomber is still out there looking for you, seems almost suicidal. I mean, how does a person force themselves to walk away from the beige sofa and back into the crosshairs?
This is where Vardanyan unpacks the exact psychological mechanism of bravery. And it's brilliant.
Let's get into it.
Tamini is not a fearless action hero. She is a civilian, and she's terrified. She admits her vulnerability to Peter. And Peter, rather than offering some toxic positivity or telling her not to be scared,
He completely validates her terror.
He does. He explains a profound truth about the human condition. He tells her that fear is the entirely natural, logical response to her situation.
Right, you'd be crazy not to be afraid.
Exactly. The philosophical takeaway here is that real bravery is absolutely never the absence of fear. A person who feels no fear in the face of a car bomb isn't brave. They're either sociopathic or fundamentally lacking a biological survival instinct.
That makes total sense. So what is true bravery then?
True bravery, as explored in this text, occurs through a very specific, brutal emotional calculus. Courage happens when the fear of shame becomes demonstrably stronger than the fear of death.
The fear of shame. Wow, that is a heavy concept to weigh against your own life.
It is the ultimate motivator for the principled mind.
Yeah.
It's the shame of abandoning your life's work. It's the shame of losing your core dignity.
And the shame of knowing what's happening back home.
Precisely. It's the unbearable shame of knowing that thousands of women and Baha'is are suffering back in Iran, and you chose to abandon them so you can hide out and drink boxed almond milk in a Texas forest.
So her fear of dying violently is massive and incredibly real.
Yes.
But her fear of looking in the mirror and knowing she surrendered her voice, her agency, and her people to a sadistic regime, that fear is heavier.
That fear is what eventually pushes her out the door.
The tension inside that safe house just rots them from the inside out. The text perfectly captures it. It says, the safe house's living room was a cocoon of shadows, their cozy charm mocked by the tension that hung in the air.
They reach a breaking point.
They do. They realize that justice and hiding are mutually exclusive. So they orchestrate this desperate midnight flight through the dark Texas woods,
Peter is literally carrying this exhausted activist on his shoulders.
risking tearing open his own healing wounds just so they can reach a location to launch a media strike. They actively, physically reject safety in order to reclaim their freedom.
It's powerful stuff. And when you read these sequences, the psychological layering of these characters feels almost too dense to be purely an act of fiction.
Which brings us to the meta-analysis drawn from the author's YouTube interview, because Zayvin Vardanyan admits that these characters are not entirely spun from thin air.
Right, art imitating life. Vardanyan states that several of these characters have distinct real-world prototypes. We really need to decode this.
Let's start with our cynical, back-shielding, algorithm-trusting hero, Peter Rue.
The most immediate question is, how much of the author, Zayvin Vardanyan, is embedded in Peter?
Well, they are both creators who deal in information, right? Peter is an investigative YouTuber. Vardanyan is an author.
Yes. Both are essentially trying to cut through the noise, the bureaucracy, and the Mickey Mouse corruption to find a philosophical truth.
So Peter is a stand-in for the author.
I would strongly argue that Peter is the direct lens of the author, specifically, the cynical but perpetually seeking artist. Peter represents the profound exhaustion of modern media creation.
Because he's so burned out at the beginning.
Exactly. Remember, the text points out his dusty YouTube play button. He is tired of shouting into the digital void, but despite that exhaustion, he still possesses an undeniable journalistic instinct to find the real story.
And he's the one who delivers a lot of the social critique.
Right. When Peter is yelling at the FBI, saying people at the FBI get drunk on their own power, that feels like an unfiltered authorial critique of institutional overreach channeled directly through the protagonist.
Okay, so if Peter is the author's stand-in for investigative skepticism, who is the prototype for Tamina Garani? Because the author isn't a Persian-American Baha'i activist.
Right. Based on the meticulous detail of her advocacy work outlined in the text, it is highly probable she is an amalgamation.
A composite character.
Yes, a composite prototype of the countless real-world advocates fighting for Iranian women and Baha'i rights globally. She embodies the fierce, highly educated diaspora that refuses to be intimidated into silence.
That makes a lot of sense.
If you look at the activists who run human rights NGOs, the women who testify before international congresses, the diaspora who organize global digital petitions while receiving death threats, Tamina is their avatar.
She is a tribute to their specific brand of intellectual, moral, and physical courage.
Exactly. She is the voice of the diaspora made flesh.
Now, what about the antagonists? Not the shadowy bomber, but the bureaucratic wall agents, Bradley, Simpson, Rice, and Morris, Agent X and Agent Y. Where did Vardanyan meet these prototypes?
I think anyone who has ever attempted to navigate a massive, inflexible system has met Agents X and Y. They represent the universal encounter with the mid-level bureaucrat.
The DMV supervisor who refuses your paperwork because it's signed in blue ink instead of black?
Yes. Or the middle manager who kills an innovative project because it doesn't align with the quarterly synergy goals.
They are the human embodiment of red tape.
They really are. These are individuals who instinctively hide behind their badges, their titles, and their standardized protocols, rather than exercising independent human logic or moral judgment.
Peter's description of them is pretty scathing.
It is. He talks about agencies hiring just about anyone who think a badge makes them God. They're not criminal masterminds plotting evil. They are aggressively mediocre people wielding disproportionate power.
And they are the primary source of friction that makes finding the truth so agonizingly difficult.
Precisely.
And then there's Betty G. Rose.
Ah, Betty.
We talked about Bob, the investigator friend who uncovers the corruption, but Betty is Peter's absolute emotional anchor.
She is vital to the story.
There's this heartbreaking scene where Peter is spiraling and Betty picks up his dusty silver YouTube play button. She isn't impressed by his cynicism at all. She tells him, "I let you down, but most of all, I let her down. Have you seen her recently? Where's the fire in her eyes? I stole it."
It's a gut punch of a scene.
So who is Betty's prototype?
Betty is the crucial prototype of the loyal, entirely unglamorous support system that every burned-out creator, investigator, or activist relies on to survive.
The person behind the scenes.
Yes. When you are fighting massive, faceless systems, whether that is the Iranian regime or the FBI's institutional inertia, you need someone to ground you in reality.
Think about the contrast in the book.
Right. Peter's rebellion is highly technical. He is out in the woods setting up a Starlink terminal in a golden box to wage a digital war against the feds.
Very tactical.
But Betty is his emotional gravity back in his cluttered apartment. She is the one who forces him to confront his own self-destruction. Before he leaves, she physically touches his face and commands him, "Pete, call her."
She demands that he stay connected to his own humanity.
Vardanyan is acknowledging that every public activist has a private Betty holding them together behind the scenes. You cannot fight the machine without someone reminding you that you are human when the cameras are turned off.
I love that. Now, we have explored the philosophical mechanics of coincidence, the theology of a new revelation, the paradox of loving a culture while fighting its state, and the realization that safety can be a prison.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We have, but we promised a final provocative thought to close this out, and this comes directly from the novel's author's note.
Okay, this is where we must heavily lean on our impartiality disclaimer again.
Definitely.
The author presents an incredibly stark, challenging, and politically charged worldview in this final section. We are not endorsing these statistics or the sociological conclusions drawn from them. We are presenting Vardanyan's argument exactly as he framed it, allowing you to evaluate the friction he creates.
Right. So lay it out for us. What is the final challenge the author leaves us with?
The author uses the endnotes to draw a brutal, devastating contrast between the physical realities of women and minorities in places like Iran and Pakistan and the ideological focus of mainstream Western feminism.
He drops some really heavy, specific statistics.
He does. He states that the Baha'is face continual executions, listing over 200 since the 1979 revolution, alongside thousands of arbitrary arrests.
And he details the violence against women in Iran as well.
Yes, that they suffer executions, physical floggings, simply for showing their unveiled faces in public. And he highlights the rampant reality of child marriage, citing 16,000 girls between the ages of 10 and 14 married off in a single year.
It's just horrifying.
It then moves to Pakistan, mentioning 1,000 honor killings annually and 12,000 child marriages.
I mean, those numbers aren't just statistics. They represent an incomprehensible scale of systemic, institutionalized violence against human bodies.
And Vardanyan uses that horrific baseline to pivot into a direct critique of Western advocacy.
What's the critique?
The note argues that while these global atrocities are occurring daily, Western feminism is, quote, obsessed with the 0 to 15% wage gap. And he claims it sometimes goes so far as to excuse or ignore the atrocities in the Middle East under the guise of respecting cultural identity.
Wow.
The author asserts that the silence of Western advocates is deafening exactly where the suffering is the absolute greatest.
Let's examine the psychology of that critique for a second. Why would a movement focus on a wage gap while ignoring executions?
What's your theory?
Is it because fighting a wage gap is a manageable institutional fight within a society that fundamentally agrees women are human beings with rights? It's a fight over percentages.
That's a fair assessment.
But fighting child marriage and honor killings in a foreign theocracy is an existential fight against a system that fundamentally views women as property. The psychological comfort of fighting the former versus the sheer overwhelming terror of acknowledging the latter is massive.
That is the exact friction Vardanyan is highlighting. The argument is that an advocacy movement built on the concept of strength and equality in a free, comfortable society becomes inherently hypocritical if it vanishes the moment women are literally being executed for demanding basic autonomy.
He's demanding a complete rethinking of how we define struggle.
The note explicitly states, real struggle is where it's needed, not where it's safe and comfortable.
Which totally echoes Tamina's realization about the safe house.
Yes.
If your advocacy is only happening where it is safe, are you actually fighting for freedom, or are you just redecorating your prison?
Exactly. And then the author delivers the final defining challenge.
Let's hear it.
The note suggests that perhaps true feminism, and intriguingly, true masculinity, doesn't look like a corporate seminar on equality. Perhaps it looks like the male Iranian singer Mehdi Yarahi, who faced imprisonment and physical danger for releasing music in solidarity with protesting women.
Taking a real physical risk.
Right. Perhaps it looks like the hundreds of thousands of men who stood in the streets of Tehran facing live ammunition alongside those women. Or the 85 male journalists who were thrown into political prisons for daring to report on human rights violations.
Wow.
The author ends the entire book by saying, that may be real feminism or real masculinity. Decide for yourself.
Decide for yourself. What an incredibly heavy burden to place on the reader.
It really is.
It completely obliterates the parameters of what performative advocacy looks like and demands that we look at what real solidarity actually costs in blood and freedom. It forces you to ask, are we fighting for comfort or are we fighting for survival?
It strips away all the theoretical academic debates and leaves you with the brutal physical reality of courage.
It really does. I want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the philosophical architecture of the Brazilian parrot. It is not just a geopolitical thriller. It is a mirror held up to our own internal definitions of destiny, bureaucracy, freedom, and duty.
It's a book that stays with you for sure.
We invite you to keep questioning the narratives around you, especially the easy ones wrapped up in neat paperwork.
And remember to look very closely at the microscopic random moments in your own life.
Absolutely, because the next time you walk out of your office and you pat your pocket and you realize you left your keys on the desk,
just remember.
Yeah, just remember, the universe might be doing a lot more than just annoying you. It might be setting you up for exactly what you are meant to do. Keep diving deep. We'll see you next time.